Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of The Amanda Show. If you're new here, my name is Amanda, and welcome. On this show, we discuss everything that has to be geopolitics and the way it affects Africa. So, think of it like geopolitics from an African perspective. So, in today's episode, there are things that we are going to discuss. And the first topic that we are discussing today, I believe, is one of the most important topics or important things that are unfolding in the world, say in the last 80, 70, 80 years. I told you before that we're in a new world, right? And the world is breaking into this whole multipolar world. But all that time, I was always wondering, where does United States fit in this? Donald Trump has just given a signal where United States fits in this, and I want us to discuss it. Right in front of us, the new world is taking shape, and I want Africa to claim its own pole in this multipolar world. And that's the first topic, and that's the first topic we'll be discussing today. Then from United States and Donald Trump's comments, we are coming to France. So you probably have heard Macron insulted Africa. Macron insulted Africa this week. I want us to discuss that comment from Macron and also the response from African leaders to this very disrespectful statement of Macron. If you don't know, Macron said that Africans are ungrateful because without France and the French troops in Africa, that many of the leaders in Africa wouldn't be in power. In fact, many of these African states wouldn't be sovereign. And I want to ask Macron his definition of sovereignty. That's the first question I want to ask him. But when we get into that segment, we'll discuss it. And then we're going to round off this episode of the Amanda Show with United States again. So Anthony Blinken mentioned, until he made a tweet that the United States will be sanctioning the leader of the RSF for committing genocide in Sudan. Okay. I want us to discuss everything that is wrong with that statement of Anthony Blinken in this episode. Because if you think about it, if he sanctions the RSF for committing genocide in Sudan, how does that stop the genocide in Sudan? We'll discuss it in this episode. Now, before we dive into this video, don't forget the usual to like this video, subscribe to this channel, because liking and subscribing helps tell YouTube that the work that I'm doing here is important. That way, YouTube can push these videos to a lot more people. That way, we can grow this channel. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your family and your friends so we can amplify the voice of Africa on a global scale. And if you also want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. Thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get into the video. Guys, everything you know or you think you have known about international relations is about to change. Yes, Donald Trump has been making some really loud statements about certain regions in the world that is making me begin to think that that era of United States claiming dominance over the world has come to a close. Now, before I dive into what I have to say, this is Trump's idea. What I want to discuss now is based on Trump's statements, what I think it's Trump's idea. But I'm not saying that he's going to execute it, right? Because the neocons, these people with this neoconservative ideology, they are still very much in powerful positions within the United States. So I don't think they may want Donald Trump to execute this thought that he has. But I want to let you know, because there's a high chance that the world is about to change, and it's changing drastically. It's changing drastically. And everything that I've been saying on this show since I started in June 2024, everything I've been saying on this show about the multipolar world is really, really a big deal. So, what are the Donald Trump statements that I'm talking about? You must have heard that Trump said he's going to. Initially, started like he was trolling. When he started saying this thing, I just looked at it like, oh, this is Trump's mega troll. But he's saying it more and more and more. And I'm like, there's a possibility that this is more than just trolling. So, what am I driving at? Trump started by saying that Canada should be the 51st state of United States and Justin Trudeau is going to be the governor. That was when he mentioned tariffs against Canada, and Justin Trudeau went to speak with him about the tariffs. That was when he started saying this thing. Beyond that, he has also said that he wants to take back the Panama Canal because it was stupid for United States to give it up. Now, I know that I have heard him say this thing when he had just recent when he left office. There was a podcast or an interview I was listening to, and he mentioned this, that that's one of the most expensive infrastructure developments United States ever took on, and US just gave it up like that. So that was when I first heard him say this thing after he left office, some years after he left office. So that's the second thing he said. He said the United States is going to take back the Panama Canal because China is doing things in the canal. So that's true. The third thing he said is they are going to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. That is Donald Trump also laying claims on Mexico. Well, like I said, I thought it was Australian. So the first thing that he said is that United States is going to take over Greenland because Greenland, the people of the island will be so happy to have Donald Trump or to be so happy to become Americans. His son even went there. Donald Trump Jr. went to Greenland and he did some videos in the country. In fact, that the statement about Greenland has rattled Europe. But why Greenland is very interesting is because even in his first term, he made mention of Greenland. Back then, he said, "Oh, Greenland is not for sale." Am I driving at? If you look at the map of the world, you realize that these areas he's discussing, Greenland, the Panama Canal, Mexico, Canada, these are all in the Americas. And if you remember, after the fall of Assad, he made a statement or made a tweet slash a truth post that United States should not be involved in anything going on in Syria. But I'm sure he should know that whatever is going on in Syria is the United States that that you can, although like I said before in the previous episode when I spoke about the fall of Assad, Erdogan of Turkey is the kingpin of that. But United States has as much responsibility in the fall of Assad as Erdogan of Turkey. So he made that statement, right? And if you listen to what he says about Russia and Ukraine war, he keeps saying, "Oh, this thing should never have happened." So what am I saying? It looks to me that this whole talk about Greenland, the Panama Canal, Mexico, that's the Gulf of Mexico, Canada being the 31st state of United States, all of this talk is more than true. Donald Trump wants to assert United States stronghold in the Americas. So if this is anything to go by, I'm thinking that we are entering the era of spheres of influence in geopolitics. Now since United States has enjoyed unipolar, that's United States has enjoyed complete hegemony over the world in like a couple of decades now. The dominant ideology in the world has been United States hegemony. That is the neocon ideology, which is the ideology I really have a problem with because it is United States is the boss of the world. So we in the United States, we can live there and come to Africa and tell the Africans to behave a certain way, and we expect them to comply. If they don't comply, we can bomb them to oblivion. We saw it with Libya, we saw it with Somalia, and different parts of the world, right? So that's the neocon ideology that acts like the world is United States for the making. Let's change the world the way we want to change the world and blah blah blah. But Donald Trump's statement now is beginning to look to me like all he wants to do is to completely assert US's dominance in the Americas. And I heard someone use the word sphere of influence, and he said that this is looking like we are going back to the 19th century, right? The 19th century where there were spheres of influence here and there. Now, if we are looking, like I mentioned before, I've mentioned several times, we're in a multipolar world. So even that era of that neocon ideology is not relevant in today's world. The neocon ideology that says United States has to be the supremacy in the entire world doesn't hold water. In fact, that is the reason why we are seeing this Russia-Ukraine war. The Russia-Ukraine war is not a case, I've told you this before, it's not a case of Russia trying to bully its neighbor Ukraine. No, it's a case of the United States using Ukraine, trying to use Ukraine to weaken Russia, to defeat Russia, whom United States considers a threat to United States hegemony. It's the same thing we are seeing in Asia with China, Taiwan, Philippines, Japan. That's what it is. It is not that China is bad, but no, United States wants to use these smaller countries like Taiwan and Philippines and Japan, yeah, to create a grouping to defeat China and weaken China and completely take China out of the game of world power. That's what it is. But as we are seeing right now in Ukraine, this plan has failed. Russia has won that war in Ukraine. Even I saw a report on the Hill some weeks ago, and in this report on the Hill, the writer mentioned that I can't remember the person who wrote it, but the writer mentioned that back in April of 2024, there was a meeting between some representatives of this Biden administration and Ukraine intelligence agencies, intelligence unit, and all of that. There was a meeting that clearly said in the meeting what they discussed is that Ukraine has failed. So they were thinking of using other non-conventional methods to continue prolonging the war. So back then, as at April of 2024, the Biden administration knew that Ukraine had lost. As at April 2024, yet in that period of April 2024, United States approved, is it 61 billion dollar military package for Ukraine, or also several countries, but Ukraine had a large chunk of that money. Do you get what I'm saying? So Ukraine has lost. All we are seeing now is just like a tidying up of the whole thing. Right. So if this is anything to go by, I want us to now look at if this, I'm not saying Trump is going to succeed, right? Because even the neocons are really going to fight to continue this their United States supremacy in the whole world. But if this is anything to go by, if you're going to look at how Trump is, based on Trump's rhetoric, if you're looking at how things may unfold, it's going to be United States is going to handle the United States sphere of influence is going to be Trump is going to focus on the Americas. Why does Trump want Greenland? Resources. Resources. Greenland is rich in resources, many rare earth minerals the for electric cars, for this green evolution that the world is undertaking. Many of that is in Greenland. One of the reasons why United States has issues with what China is doing in Africa is because many African nations that produce these rare earth minerals, China is closely working with them. Many of these mines, some of these mines that are producing these rare earth minerals are managed by Chinese companies. Even not just in Africa, even in Australia. Even in Australia, some of these mines that produce these rare earth minerals for electric revolution are controlled by Chinese companies. So Trump looking to get into Greenland, I think it's a card that Trump is playing to also bring United States into this rare earth minerals game. Other than that, they are also going to because they're also going to create this a lane, a shipping lane, because now that we and it's also the same thing with the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is a shipping lane. So instead of going through this, what's the name of this canal that runs through Egypt, cuts across Egypt, Middle East? Anyway, that I'll find the name and put it on the screen. Instead of using that or going across Africa, which is around the southern part of Africa, right? They want to create another shipping lane in the Arctic. Russia is powerful in the Arctic. In fact, Russia has several military bases in the Arctic. Russia has ice-breaking ships in the Arctic because Russia is there. So what Donald Trump is doing, to me, Donald Trump is carving out U.S. sphere of influence to be in the Americas. That's what it looks like to me. Now, I've said in this multipolar world, we have seen that Russia is a world power. We have seen China is a world power. We have seen United States is a world power. Another place to look at is India. India is a world power. Maybe you may have some arguments that, oh, no, not here, not here, not here. But you cannot deny that India is a powerful force. After India, another country that I heard someone mention, and the person said only if that country should get its politics together, that country is already a world power. It's as good as a world power. It's Brazil. And if you look at Trump's talk about this America, it doesn't go beyond Panama. Do you understand? So it seems like North America and just Panama. So this is Donald Trump is saying this is going to be US's sphere of influence. If the United States has a sphere of influence in the Americas, we can easily say that China's sphere of influence is Asia. India's sphere of influence is going to be the Indian subcontinent, which is India, which will include Pakistan, which will include Bangladesh, which will include Sri Lanka. Right? We can say that is India's sphere of influence. We can say Russia's sphere of influence is Europe, which is why I think the biggest losers, if Donald Trump executes this thing he's talking about, the biggest losers are going to be the Europeans. Because for something so stupid, they went to antagonize Russia. If United States, based on what Trump is saying, if United States is going to focus on the Americas, where do you leave those satellite states in Europe? That is the reason why you've been seeing them. They are saying they want to discuss with Trump. They want to do this with Trump. They are running all around Trump because they want to keep Trump in Europe. It's not just because of Ukraine now. They're using Ukraine as the cover, but it's because if Trump moves and focuses on the Americas, his attention is not going to be on Europe. It's going to now be clear that Europe, when it comes to geopolitics, Europe is irrelevant because Europe did not pursue a policy of sovereignty. Rather, they were happy to be lapdogs of the United States. So look at it now. Europe is nothing. Europe, the leaders of Europe have successfully made Europe nothing. Now let's go back to sphere of influence. Now, if you look at the Middle East, we are going to say who is going to be the country that may claim the Middle East as a sphere of influence. Don't forget Turkey. I mentioned in the beginning of this segment that one of the architects of the fall of Assad is going to be Erdogan of Turkey. Even when I mentioned, I think there was a time I mentioned on this show, this is last week or 2 weeks ago, that there was a conversation that Erdogan had with his, was it like party leaders, but it was in his country anyway, and he was bringing up the Ottoman Empire, and he said if the Ottomans hadn't lost World War One, if the World War had gone in another way, maybe a country like Syria would still be under the influence of Turkey. If Donald Trump has his way, sphere of influence in the Middle East, we have Turkey. Let's not look away and act like Israel is not there. Israel is there. Iran is there. Saudi Arabia is there. That's why I'm thinking that the Middle East is going to be it's going to be it's going to be a serious fight because they have countries that are really pulling themselves to be big dogs. But the only one that because and then the interesting thing about that Middle East is that when it comes to military is clearly Turkey. When it comes to economy, I think right now Turkey is having economic issues. So when it comes to economy, maybe we'll be looking at say Saudi Arabia, right? When it comes to political clout, I can give that political clout also to Turkey because maybe that's one of the reasons that Erdogan is trying to bring peace between Ethiopia and Somalia. You know, he's trying to be like mediator. Remember in 2022 when they had those peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, what did they have it? Ankara in Turkey. So we can give military and political clout to Turkey. So economy right now is the one that if maybe if they get their things together, maybe Turkey. But I would say the overwhelming force for now is going to be going to Turkey. But we still have contenders with Israel, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. So if you look at the world now, the only place that doesn't seem to have a region like a, an overwhelming force that can say, all right, this is my sphere of influence is Africa. It's Africa. There's no single African country that is over because if you say military, right? Military we can give it to Egypt. If we say political clout, we've been seeing several movements that what South Africa has led, though I'll give credit to Ramaphosa for that on international stage because Ramaphosa of South Africa led the African team that carried a peace initiative to Ukraine and Russia. And when they did that, it was a very disrespectful thing that happened to them, these African delegates in Poland, right? I don't want to go into that discussion now, right? So we're going to say South Africa. That then, if we now say economy, which is where many African countries are really on their knees, honestly, because for me, I would say you should have at least $1 trillion economy. at least $1 trillion economy for you to want to say, all right, we're an economic behemoth. But there's no the highest and any African country has hit in economy, to the best of my knowledge, was 550 billion, and that was Nigeria. So we have a very long way to go. Which is why now this is where I'm having my worry. Because if the world right now is carving up spheres of influence, Trump saying, oh, the Americas is ours, do not come here. Brazil may now say, okay, several Southern Africa, Latin American countries, Brazil can say, this is where we are going to stay. China can say Asia. India can say the Indian subcontinent is ours, right? Russia will say Europe is ours, don't come here. Do you get me? Turkey will say the Middle East is ours, don't come here. Wait, that means Africa is the only one open for carving up as anybody, any world power deems fit. This is where I have my worry. Because if the 19th century is anything to go by, to remember, if that 19, because this is, like I mentioned, someone said, whatever, if what Trump is planning now should fully arrange itself, this we are going back to geopolitics of the 19th century. And if the 19th century geopolitics is anything to go by, Africa was carved up. Africa, the European powers, because then they were the overwhelming force, the European powers had a field day with Africa. They had a field day with Africa. Remember when they carved off Africa in Berlin, the Berlin Conference, it was the 19th century. It was the 19th century. So its space of influence is the new world we are entering into from January 20th. I'm not saying Trump is going to succeed. Like I said, the neocon ideology says the world is ours, the entire world, not just these regions Trump is mentioning. The neocon ideology says the entire world is ours. So they are going to fight Trump, and this is regional hegemony game he's trying to play. So I'm not saying Trump is going to succeed, but I want us to keep at the back of our mind as we're entering the next. In fact, from January 20th, the whole from January 20th, the game is on, and that sphere of influence geopolitics is an area where United States will not just get into Europe without consulting the Russians. The United States will not just get into Asia without consulting the Americans. The United States will not just do anything they want to do in the Indian subcontinent without speaking with India. The United States is not going to do anything it wants to do in most parts of Latin America without talking to Brazil. The United States is not going to do anything it wants to do in, say, the Middle East without speaking to see. I don't know whether it's going to be Turkey that will win that, or Israel or Iran or Saudi Arabia, I don't know. But when it comes to Africa, everything is open. If now this is hypothetically, I'm not saying this is going to happen, right? This is just me painting a picture. If US says, all right, if Trump says, all right, I want us to focus on these regions of the Americas to completely assert America's power in this area, as they're even trying to take over and continue and also play in the Arctic, right? In the Arctic region. If the if Trump is saying that, and this is hypothetically, I'm not saying it's going to happen, and Donald Trump says every American military base in Africa, I'm closing it. And Donald Trump closes all American military. This is I'm not saying this is happening. I'm just painting a picture. And Donald Trump closes all America's military bases in Africa. I need you to understand that Africa is open for carving again. They can carve us up again. They can carve us up. If we are playing the 19th century geopolitics, remember what happened in 1884. Remember what happened. They carved us up at the Berlin Conference. At the Berlin Conference, they carved us up. So we are entering a new world where this is a possibility again. Should we be so stupid the second time not to do something about it? I'm announcing it now. I'm probably you've not heard anybody say this thing. Because I've not heard anybody say that Africa is going to be up for the carving again. I'm the first person that I know is saying this thing. I'm the first person. So if this thing happens and the whole world says, all the superpowers in the world says we are going to focus on our region, Africa is exposed. Africa is exposed. Africa is exposed. So now more than ever, I am hoping that people who are listening. Like this is an existential moment for Africa. Our existence depends on it. I told you in the last episode of this show that when you got the charm of an election that of sorry of independence that you got because we didn't really gain independence, but when we got that charm that was called independence, they did not forgive us. They did not. They did not, because now you cannot just enter Africa because of so-called international law. You cannot just enter Africa to do as you please. Their procedures. Although NATO and the rest they did as they pleased, but the way say the French could just come in and do anything, or the British could just come in and do anything, it doesn't work like that. This is a new world that is taking form, like that is taking form in front of us. Hmm. So what can we do? We as Africans, what can we do? If you're listening to me now and you have access to anybody in any any political office in any African nation, particularly on the federal level, if you have access, let them know that the world is changing. So that you in your country, right, you can begin to think, how can we position ourselves? Right. But now, for we as the people, what can we do? Number one, every African needs to understand what is going on. By God's grace, before the end of this month, our African media movement, registration site, everything should be ready. We are going to use media. We are going to use media. And we are going to parrot, we are going to speak, we are going to scream Africa's interest in a new world. So that every African will understand that the world is changing. We are going back to 19th century geopolitics. That is the first thing. The good thing about now compared to the 19th century when they were able to so easily carve us up, it's number one, we have information. Number two, we have social media. We can push this thing out. So there should be no excuse for any African, especially you that is listening to me, whether you're an African in Africa or you're an African in diaspora. There should be no reason why you are not speaking what is going on in the world. That is number one. Number two, that is the first thing we are going to work on. The second thing that we Africans need to now do, we have to remove puppets from office. We have to remove puppets from office. Because if Donald Trump is doing this thing that he's planning he wants to do, and every major and the world powers are going to focus on their regions, we cannot afford to have puppets in power. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's not just sell us out. You say, oh, they sold that. No, it's not just selling us out. They will destroy once and for all. They will destroy this continent, or they will destroy your respective country. So I don't want to call names now because by now you people should know the people that I'm looking at. But I don't want to call names. But you in your country, there are certain leaders you know. These leaders have not been working for the interest of your country. It is time to start taking them out. Begin to look for position, not just look for opposition parties, right? Opposition leaders. But sometimes both the opposition and the governing party are the same thing. If I'm going to give an example, let me give you an example with the United Kingdom. Both the conservatives and Labour, they are the same thing. They have the same foreign policy. They are the same thing. If you look at the United States, both the Republicans and the Democrats, they are the same thing. The only difference is the MAGA sect. Is that MAGA? Because MAGA has a different ideology. It's the MAGA sect. Quite right, there's several things, similarities they have here and there, right? But that is that. So if the same thing we have in Africa, many African countries now, both the opposition and the governing party, they are the same thing. So now should be at the point where we should begin to groom new leaders. We have 4 years. We have 4 years. Begin to groom new leaders. Look for people who are saying something entirely different. Look for people that are outside of that engagement, or maybe even then, I want to say outside of the system, but sometimes maybe in the system. But for many years, you've listened to them and they've been saying different things compared to the widely accepted norm of being puppets. Begin to look for those and look for those ones. But If in your country, peradventure in your country, you don't see anyone, why don't you become the opposition? What stops you from going into politics? Nothing. Nothing. To the best of my knowledge, in every African country, anybody can throw their hat into the ring and say, all right, I'm getting into the game of politics. Now it's time for you to become opposition. Now it's time because we cannot allow these puppets to keep governing us. If we miss it this time, I don't know if we can redeem the situation in Africa. If we miss it now, at this time when the whole thing has not fully formed, everybody is breaking into segments. Everybody is claiming sphere of influence. If we miss it now and we allow this new world to really take shape and we are still on the back foot, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous for Africa. So these are the two things I want us to keep in mind going forward. These are the two things I want us to keep in mind going forward. Number one, we're going to use media to let every African know what is going on. We're going to use media to speak up for Africa. Because now, let me give you an instance, right? Like I mentioned, to me, the three things that you used to know is superpower is military. You have to have overwhelming military force. Military. Apart from no African country, like I mentioned before, I think the strongest military on the continent is Egypt, and even the military of Egypt cannot really stand compared to militaries of some other countries. I don't want to mention names. So even with that military, I put slash technology, because many of the technology we use today they came out from military. AI came out from military. The internet came out from military. 4G, 5G came out from military. Do you understand? So I would say military slash technology. We need to have overwhelming force. That is number one. Number two, I would say political clout. Which country in Africa will speak and the world will listen? We don't have any. Which country in Africa has taken up strong mediative roles? Apart from that, um, what do you call it? That African delegation that Ramaphosa of South Africa led to bring peace in Russia and Ukraine. I really haven't seen. Even sometimes, even within region, it seems that we cannot even fix regional issues. Sudan has been burning since 2023. No African country has been able to fix it. The DRC has been burning for how long? No, nothing has been done. The DRC, we've been having Rwanda DRC here and there, fight, but nothing has been done. Okay, look at Mozambique that started burning in October of 2024. Nothing till now. You have been watching Mozambique burn. Do you understand? So no country in Africa has political clout to boast of that when you speak on a global level, they listen. No country in Africa. Economy, no country in Africa. Like I said, for me, it is at least $1 trillion economy. None. The highest any African lead country has hit, to the best of my knowledge, is Nigeria, and it was 550 billion. That's not enough. That is not enough. So we are going to use media to form these policies for us. What do I mean by that? If, for example, we are seeing an African country, let me use Nigeria, or Tinubu is signing a very disastrous deal with the IMF, we will raise alarm and we have to make so much noise because it is that deal with the IMF that brought Nigeria into where Nigeria is now. That Tinubu took it from a measly and a very shameful 400 and something billion. Right now, as we speak, Nigeria is 200 and something billion. That's very terrible. In the from May 2023 to this is January 2024, Tinubu has taken millions of Nigerians into poverty. So if you see an African leader, we can say the same thing for Ruto in Kenya. So if you see an African leader going to sign for something so disastrous, as as this, we will use media to raise alarm. We will make noise with it. So much noise that they cannot ignore our voices. Because now we are going to use media to put pressure. If we are going to, if we want to protect ourselves, oh my God, if we want to protect Africa in this 19th century style of geopolitics, we need to be alert because people who want to carve us up, we are going to be coming in different methods, different ways, and we have to use media to raise alarm. If we are seeing an African country burning for so long in Sudan, we have to use our media to begin to put pressure on our respective governments to bring a solution to it. So this is what I think that we can do. Right now, I'm saying this for people who are not in political power. Because if you're in political power, of course, the conversation is going to be different. But for we, for like myself and some of you who are not in political power, and you're thinking, what can I do? This is what we can do. We can create media. Everybody, African Media Movement. By the ending of this month, I'm going to make the announcement where we can sign up and join and everything. African Media Movement. We will use media to do it. Number two, we'll have to start orchestrating our plan to get puppets out of power and create a kind of structure within politics in Africa that no puppet can ever come into office again. No puppet can ever come into office again. If not, we are going to be destroyed. Or we are going to be destroyed. So let me know what you think about Donald Trump's moves, making claims. It seems to me like he's taking America's claims within his region. And let me know also what you think about what I suspect that it is. We are going back to 19th century geopolitics, where it's sphere of influence. Every country, every superpower, every overwhelming superpower is staking its claim. Russia is. I really feel sorry for those in Europe because their leaders were so stupid. Permit my language. The leaders were so misadvised and misinformed to go against their own interests when they went to antagonize the Russians. Well, if America decides to leave Europe, Europe is going to be standing there empty with a very angry Russia in its back door. There was no need. All Germany, France, United Kingdom, all of them, all the antagonists they gave to the Russians, there was no need. It didn't make sense. But here we are. So let me know. Share your thoughts with me in the comment section below. And also Africa's place in the multipolar world. Let me know your comments in the let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the share button so that every African and the whole world should know that we're entering a different kind of geopolitics of international relations, and Africa needs to claim its own spot in this world. And as always, if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. Thank you so much. So, Emmanuel Macron has done what Emmanuel Macron knows how to do best, and that is to insult. That is to insult. This is okay. Let me tell you what happened before I say what I wanted to say. So, Macron said that Africans are ingrates, that we don't know how to show gratitude because without he and the French military, that many African countries will not be sovereign today. But this is not the first time Macron is insulting Africa. Remember, I think that was 2017, or was it 2018? But once when he came into power newly, he said that Africans we are uncivilized. We don't. There's no civilization. We don't. Blah blah. He said that Africans are uncivilized. So maybe whenever he feels like it's not such a big deal, like I've said this thing here on this show several times. Whenever those elites, I don't like to use the word elite, but let me use the word elite. Those elites in France, whenever they feel like they're not such a big deal, they want to come to Africa to beat their chest like a gorilla in his prime to say, yeah, 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 we're still the big deal. So that's Macron's problem. But but what I'm really excited about now is that several African countries spoke back, right? And it's really good. I like that Chad, the government of Chad spoke back, and also Senegal, Sonko, that's the Prime Minister of Senegal, spoke back, which is important because if I was even wondering why Cote d'Ivoire and several other countries didn't say anything, but I like that at least some African countries spoke back. So now let's go back to this Macron statement. Macron said without the French military that African nations would not have been sovereign. Who took the sovereignty away in the first instance? Emmanuel Macron. Who took the sovereignty away in the first instance? Is it not your country? Is it not you and your ancestors? If you had just stayed in your country and focused on the issues you had in your country, This back and forth we're having, no sovereignty, no sovereignty, we'll not be having it. It is you, in just in case you don't know how to look in the mirror. It is you that took away the sovereignty in the first instance. It's you. Second of all, let's even look at this so-called peace and stability he said he brought to the Sahel. The fire that is burning in the Sahel, France can hold responsibility for it. Mhm. France followed United States and NATO. In fact, I think even in the WikiLeaks, if I'm not mistaken, in the WikiLeaks document that was leaked back then, it was revealed that the reason that France was one of the heavy proponents of getting into Libya because Gaddafi was planning to create a currency that would be used across Africa, including these African countries that are using currencies that is printed by France. So you're one of the masterminds of the chaos. It was because of NATO's intervention in Libya. This Sahel that we are saying is on fire today. It was NATO's intervention in Libya. NATO flooded Libya with weapons, with people with some extremist ideology because they wanted to get rid of Gaddafi. They did it, and then that fire burned from Libya and came into the Sahel region. And let's not forget that in 2013, France got involved in Mali. Let's not forget that in 2013, France got involved in Mali with military that added to the fire. So, Macron, maybe you're thinking if you're looking for the problem, what has caused the problem in the Sahel region, why it's burning, you should probably look in the mirror. Mm. Instead of coming and pointing at Africans that are just victims of your silly policy. Instead of pointing at Africans and saying, you have a problem. Africans that are the victims of your disastrous foreign policy. Maybe you should look in the mirror. Maybe. And there was a response that the Prime Minister of um, Senegal gave that I think was really apt. He said, Sonko, he said that, I'm paraphrasing, that let's not forget the role that African nations played in the liberation of Europe, both in the First World War, the Second World War. In the First World War, they took soldiers from here. Africans died for a fight that it was not ours. In the Second World War, we Africans also got involved to die for a fight that is not our business. Let's not forget. And Sonko said something so correct. He said, if not because of the Africans that went to die fighting the Nazis in Europe, maybe, just maybe, France will still be under Germany today. Because Adolf Hitler invaded France. He did. He invaded France and he took over several places in France. It was the blood of Africans. It was the blood and the sweat of Africans. A fight that was not our business. It was the blood of Africans that liberated France from the shackles of the Germans. It was. It was. So maybe France is the ingrate here. Maybe. Maybe every morning Macron should be calling African countries and saying, thank you for liberating us from the Nazis. Thank you for playing a part in making France a free country today. But no, he's coming to ask us to give thanks. Give thanks for the fire you set in our region, Macron. Give thanks for the fire you set in our region. The hubris. The hubris. Anyway, I know what the problem is. I tell you what the problem is. Macron is a failed leader. Let's look at France today. Political instability. Because right now you're still thinking France is the France in your head. It's political instability. With how many protests have we been seeing in France? As we speak, the farmers are still protesting. The farmers are protesting. The French people went to the polls election and they overwhelmingly, most of them voted for Marie Le Pen. But Macron went to collude with the left to so that they can do something, so they can play politics to stop Marie Le Pen coming into office. They succeeded, but now the prime minister he appointed has failed. So right now, the politics in France is very fragile. It's very fragile. It's crazy. But Macron does not want to look at that. The economic situation in France is a mess. France is in an economic mess, just in case you don't know. Because Macron does not want to face his failures in France, he wants to come to Africa to beat his chest like a gorilla in his prime. You're mistaken. Okay, we've seen the disgrace that France has had to face in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger. Is a terrible blow. Now, in the last segment, I mentioned that the withdrawal of French military troops French military in Cote d'Ivoire is actually Macron made mention of doing that back in June 2024. Yes, but maybe the rest of the world are not really understanding. So the the perception of the rest of the world is, oh, they all these other African countries are kicking out the French, right? So Macron is trying to come and say, no, 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 we are still the big deal in Africa. No, 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 no. Macron, you are not. Let me tell you something, Manuel Macron. You're a failed leader. You're a failed president. You have failed in your domestic policy. You have failed in your foreign policy. You worked very strongly to make France a satellite state of the United States. Now it looks like Donald Trump is looking away from Europe. You are scared because now you're nothing. You are nothing. So I would advise you, Emmanuel Macron, rather than come to Africa to try to beat your chest like a gorilla in his prime, trying to remind yourself that yes, you are the big deal, it's better to be humble. Yes, it's better to be humble and face your flaws and face reality, what it really is. Tell yourself the truth, where France is really, and then decide how you can make France great. Because when it comes to Africa, your clout is over, and there's nothing you can do about it. So let me know what you think about Macron and his disrespectful statements to Africa that we are all ingrates. coming from France, coming from France. Macron has the mouth to say that if not for French military, there will be no sovereignty in Africa. Who took the sovereignty away in the first place? We're talking about sovereign nations. Are you not printing the currencies of these African countries? The currencies they're using in their country, does that ring like sovereignty to you? Does that ring like sovereignty to you? Let me know what you think about Macron's statement in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your family, your friends, everybody, so we can amplify what is going on in Africa with relations to the rest of the world on the global stage. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. Thank you so much. In our final topic for today, we return to the United States. A few days ago, Anthony Blinken of United States tweeted that the US is sanctioning the leadership of the RSF for the genocide they are committing in Sudan. Well, my question is, how does this sanction stop the genocide? In case you don't know, Sudan, you probably know that Sudan has been at war since April of 2023. But the stories that have come out of Sudan have been so painful. For someone like me who follows geopolitics and I follow the news every so often, the kind of things that I'm seeing that's coming out of Sudan, oh my God, it's very painful, extremely painful. So that is why any move to bring a stop to what is going on in Sudan, I welcome it. And I don't mind if it's coming from the Americans. Because for several times, um, the Americans have called for peace and they want to, they've even said let them handle the negotiation. They've overseen some negotiation, but everything hasn't led anywhere. It hasn't led anywhere. Now, back in 2022, when Russia marched into Ukraine and US, the West, they threw all the sanctions that they could at Russia. What they told us was that the sanctions were going to weaken Russia so that Putin cannot continue his war. They use the word like Putin's war chest. They want to dry out Putin's war chest. That was back in 2022. This is January 2025. Putin is winning. Russia is winning. Putin's war chest did not get dry. So that is what I am asking. What is the point of sanctions? As America now has said we are sanctioning the RSF, how does that stop the genocide in Sudan? You're putting sanctions on the RSF that they cannot The leader of the RSF and his family members cannot visit America. Is America the only country in the world? Is the United States the only country in the world? They will go to other places. After all, he's in Qatar. Qatar is an American ally. Sorry, the UAE. The UAE is an American ally. The UAE has been accused of funding the RSF and the genocide they are committing in Sudan. Why is the United States not sanctioning the UAE? Why is the United States not sanctioning the UAE? If you really want to put a stop to what is going on in Sudan, it's not just the idea is not just to fight the the RSF, is to deal with the person that is pushing the RSF, which is the UAE. So if you want to put a stop in the genocide, you said genocide is bad. I agree with you, Anthony Blinken. Genocide is bad. But if you want to put a stop to the genocide in Sudan, you start with the UAE that is giving the money, that is funding the genocide. By the time you cut off the money supply, the genocide will stop because they cannot buy weapons anymore. They cannot pay their troops anymore. You can't do anything. The head of the RSF is not in Sudan. The head of the RSF is in, I think it's either Qatar or the UAE. These are allies of the United States. These are American allies in the Middle East. Why don't you call up your ally? Okay, so you don't want to sanction the UAE, fine. Why don't you call them over the phone and tell them to stop? You're the United States of America. Everybody should listen to you. Call the UAE over the phone and tell them to stop. Oh, it's so bad. Don't kill the Sudanese. Oh, we really like the people of Sudan. These women, young men are killed. Even Anthony Blinken in his tweets, he made mention of the sexual assault many women have to endure. Even young girls, children have to endure at the hands of the RSF in Sudan. Sometime last year, I did an episode of this show, and in the episode, I mentioned that over 150 women in Sudan committed suicide to avoid being sexually assaulted by the RSF. Do you know what it means? These ladies, these even young girls, they had to commit suicide to avoid being sexually assaulted by the RSF. And Anthony Blinken is giving us a tweet that yes, what would the sanctions do? Did the sanctions stop Russia? No. Did the sanctions against North Korea, did it stop North Korea? No. The sanctions against Venezuela, did it stop Venezuela and Maduro? No, Maduro, they just inaugurated him. No. The sanctions against Zimbabwe, did it stop the government of Zimbabwe from doing what it wants to do? No. So what is the point of sanctions? How will sanctions change the situation in Sudan? How? Should I tell you what I think? I think that this announcement is for sure. Because if the United States really, really, really wants to stop what is going on in Sudan, they will call up the UAE. They will give a phone call to the UAE. They will. They don't want to stop it. These sanctions that he came to tweet and making announcements with bells and whistles is not to stop the genocide in Sudan. It's a show for Africans to think that America has got their back. That's what it is. It's for Africans to think that America has got their back. So we say, wow, you see, America is really the good guy. America is really working to help Sudan. But the RSF is just being too tough. Where is the RSF getting its weapons from? Where? A journalist I saw the report in Middle East Eye sometime last year. A journalist gave the trail of how the weapons get into Sudan, implicating some other African countries. Why don't you sanction those ones? From the UAE. Everything starts and falls from the UAE. The United Arab Emirates. Many Africans are flying to Dubai for vacation. Yet that money you are putting into the Dubai economy, they're using it to fund genocide in Sudan. This is a show, Anthony Blinken, and I'm not impressed by it. Because the lives of these women, of these children, and even these men in Sudan should be worth more than a tweet. It should be worth more than a tweet. See, Africa, nobody's coming to help you. Get that thing into. Let all of us understand this. Nobody's coming to help you. Nobody's coming to help you. We by ourselves, we will stand up by ourselves. We will dust ourselves by ourselves and we'll say enough by ourselves. That is the only time when this kind of nonsense will stop. Africa would have to assert complete sovereignty and dominance in its region. In its region, complete. No African state will be tolerant to countries like the UAE that is allegedly funding genocide, the sexual assault of girls and women in Sudan. We will not take it until we get to that point. All this nonsense will keep happening. But we are fast getting to that point. We are running to that point. And very soon, if you continue on this mark, very soon this kind of nonsense will stop. So please let me know your thoughts about Anthony Blinken and his sanctions against the RSF. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with everybody so that at the very least we can raise alarm and raise awareness, let people know what is going on in Africa, especially with regard to international relations. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing here, feel free to use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description, and it's also on the screen. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of The Amanda Show. My name is Amanda Akalono, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.